I live in Ferndale. I have an organic dairy. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a grandfather. I attended local schools, Bay Area schools, and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I'm not a politician, so don't expect smooth talk, but you can expect real answers. Many people have come to me asking that I run for supervisor, that we need skills and a personality that is focused on productivity and implementation. We have highways that need attention. We have a port that is underutilized. The second largest bay, natural bay on the California coast. We have business community here and individual citizens that struggle with permitting and enforcement issues and a drug problem that is near epidemic proportion. Our railroad needs to be looked at with all the options. It is extremely important. I have lived through some of the catastrophic disasters that have hit Humboldt County and here in California, and we really need to look at it. All the options must be open. We have recreational and business opportunities that rely on leadership and listens, plans, and expects implementation. Decisions need to be made that make sense for each and every community within Humboldt County.
And the reasons that I'm running are the same reasons that so many of us choose to live here, and the reasons that we choose to stay here. That I believe Humboldt County is a great place to live, to work, to start a business, to raise a family. And as we grow, which we will and which we need to, it's important that we know what things we want to hold on to and what things we need to change. We all want to protect our working forests and our farmlands to make sure that they can continue to provide food, timber, good jobs, and they also provide open space, and they provide a strong connection to our heritage up here. At the same time, we need to build a stronger local economy. We need to provide more affordable housing, and we need to build safe and healthy communities. These are obviously all complicated issues. We've got to provide infrastructure. We've got to be able to deal with social services. All of the things that go into building a community. These aren't just land use issues. These are broad, all-encompassing issues, and they're not a place for someone with a single agenda. My broad background that I bring to this, both as a manufacturing consultant and as a community advocate, working both here and in Sacramento, gives me real-world experience and proven leadership to get things done. I've demonstrated that, so this isn't just words. You can check the record. As your supervisor, I'll make sure that our innovative local businesses have the tools that they need to grow, including the second fiber optic line. There's nothing that we can do that has more bang for the buck than getting that in here. That's important to jobs, education, healthcare, all of us.
You know, I was elected to Arcata City Council 4 years ago. The people of the largest city in our district elected me, and I've served for the past 3.5 years. I bring a background that started in 1993 when I moved here. I moved to Arcata particularly because I wanted a small town, Northern California with a university. I had lived in Ukiah, which is a small town without a university, and I wouldn't live there again. So, in fact, I'm sure that most of us here are here, one way or another, because of that university. Whether your friends brought you, or you came there, or whatever. At least in my experience, that's what I find. Anyway, I moved here in 1993 as a single dad with 3 kids. I had no money, no job, and I didn't know anything. But I knew I wanted to be here. I consider this paradise. I currently am a small business owner. I landscape, mow and blow, if you want to call it that. I was a teacher at Pacific Indian School for 7 years as a Spanish instructor for junior high. Before that, I was a teacher's assistant and the president of PTA in Calpella Redwood Valley, Mendocino County. I've been a union member, shop steward, and a business agent for Teamsters Local 624 out of Santa Rosa. I worked 10 years as a millwright at Masonite, Ukiah. Before that, I was an engineer, project manager for complicated high-rise construction, like 50 stories above. Prior to that, I was in college at California State University, Los Angeles. My neighborhood where I grew up, I went to college right in the neighborhood, because that's the way poor people have to do it. You can't go all over the town. After that, prior to that, I was in the U.S. Army for 3 years. And at 19 years old, I was a sergeant and I ran a large group of people. And little did I know that I'd be doing this today. I also graduated from the Non-Commissioned Officers Academy in Bad Tolls, Germany, 7th Army. So that's who I am as a background. Currently, I'm on the Humboldt Transit Authority as the chairman of the board, elected by the board, which includes 2 supervisors. And I've made many land use decisions as a city councilman. I'm used to land use decisions, yes and no, depending on whether it's a good or bad use of land. I'm used to budget discussions. We're in them right now. And if you look at Arcata, City of Arcata's book, you know that we're in good shape in comparison to the rest of the communities around us in the county. We're not that way just because we didn't know what we were doing. We had great help and we supported them. I think the thing that I offer as a supervisor is the ability to discern what is the right answer, to get away from all the talk and all the statistics and say, okay, I've heard all that. I know all that information, and now what's the right thing to do? And I think time and again I've landed in the right spot. And I think it's because I'm able to look at stuff, get away from the subterfuge, and get to the point. So I'm also a campaign and finance reform person. I don't believe in money in campaigns to the extent that I don't take money. I don't do ads, no lawn signs, no buttons, no endorsement lists. I want to stay away from that loop that has ruined our state and national politics. And I think we have an opportunity right here to start the change.
I think I have a unique background. I graduated from University of California, Davis with a degree in landscape architecture and a focus on sustainable community development. People think of landscape architect, they think of gardens and flowers, but really landscape architecture is about a much larger scale. My degree was more about combining environmental science and community development and looking at how we can build communities that live lighter on the land and that are more human-friendly as well. I worked for a firm in New England and New Hampshire for about a year and a half, where I had a chance to do everything from work on general plan update process to work on town center master plans. I even designed a pedestrian circulation program for a nuclear power plant. They had a problem where the executives all got to park close and all the workers parked further away, and the executives would get to their cars first and run the employees over as they were leaving. So I had an opportunity to work on a really interesting problem there. Because of a layoff situation that happened at the small company I was with in New Hampshire, the situation is very similar to what we have in Humboldt County. There were only 2 landscape architecture firms in the entire state, and when mine basically had to shut down, I had to think hard, and I found myself in a new career. Instead of doing community planning, doing financial planning for individuals and small businesses, and that's a career I've been at now for about 11 years. And that gave me a whole new set of skills, skills that I built on learning the planning process as a landscape architect, but learning about finance, learning to be a financial analyst, learning about investments, learning about how investment capital is created and how investment decisions are made, and learning about personal family budgets and sharing my clients' struggles as they look to find jobs and find houses they can afford and educate their children and afford to send them on to college. I became very passionate about economic development because of that experience of working with these families and realizing that was probably one of the biggest things that we could do in this community to solve some of those problems. And so I joined the Arcata Main Street Board of Directors, and about 6 months later found myself in the president's seat, and also found myself at the helm of an organization that was tens of thousands of dollars in debt with a budget of only $100,000, and some really challenging times. I served the next 2 years really helping to evaluate what our mission really was, how we could create value for our constituency and the community, how we could get the financial ship righted. And 2 years later, we had cash in the bank. We had a new agreement with the city that was tied to the city's economic development plan, which I also worked on while I was served on the Arcata Economic Development Committee at the city, and a new staffing plan, and just a really reinvigorated organization. I also serve on the Arcata Economic Development Corporation Loan Committee, where we actually review business plans and look at financials and make decisions about the lending through government programs for small business startups and business transfers. And I also serve on the Workforce Investment Board at the county, where we really study how to improve the training and make sure that our workforce is ready to work, as well as try to identify the opportunities in the future that we need to prepare our workforce for. So I think I have a unique qualification from community development, economic development, finance, and on top of that, I think the biggest skill that I bring to the table as supervisor, basically my entire career has been about helping other people make decisions. Transportation infrastructure is, I think, one of the cores of what government should be about, providing that infrastructure. We all benefit much more broadly. You mentioned the benefits to businesses as a whole. It makes the businesses more competitive, more profitable, more efficient. We have environmental benefits from lower cost transportation that are less dependent on fossil fuels, not to mention, future innovation that's going to occur in the future. That's why we subsidize the roadways. That's why we subsidize the airports. And there's going to be a shift. As fuel prices rise, airports are going to become more and more costly and less feasible. We're going to be looking at other alternatives for shipping, same with trucking. So I definitely support that, and I would certainly fight as supervisor for any dollars that were available through the transportation system.
I guess I've gotten used to that. So subsidy to the rail, why not? If the rail is ever going to get out of Humboldt County, it needs to be subsidized. So, that has to happen if that rail line is going to be affected south of Humboldt County. I actually feel like we should focus on the rail locally and get it going locally, and stop trying to fight with Marin, Napa, Novato, Petaluma, because they want light rail on that line, and I don't know that we're ever going to get freight on it with them fighting with us, maybe 100 years from now. So I just feel that we need to focus on the rail in Humboldt County, and to that effect, eventually we'll all be looking at light rail, because we won't be able to afford to run the buses. So light rail is something I haven't heard much about. Do you benefit the local businesses? Depends on if the rail runs or not. If it runs, it could be a benefit. If it's not running, it's of no use. And so I would like to see something happen somehow, whether it's tourists between Samoa and Arcata, let's get something going, or whether in the big picture we have a light rail or freight leaving the county. The fiber optic, the current consideration for path for fiber optic is north of here and east over to the trunk line that runs up 5. We currently have a line that comes out of Santa Rosa. That's our fiber optic that we have now. Trying to be redundant is not going back down that same path. It's getting over the mountain and hooking onto the main line that's going up 5. I've been in all the discussions for years now, and listened to all the stories, and you know what? I used to sell fiber optics and design systems in 1972, so I know something about it.
That's one of the purposes of government, is figure out what things are in our common interest. To get there, we have to make sure that it's feasible, that the use justifies the investment in it, and so we have to make sure that we answer those questions. Benefit to local businesses, definitely. Our businesses here have huge issues in being able to move product out of the area, bring in materials and move product out. That's a huge issue. We need to look at this within the context of other things. The Richardson Grove project is something that obviously a lot of our local businesses need to be able to move product, again, to reach those markets. Short sea shipping, as I said before, and as I'm getting really good at saying, despite having a problem with S's, that's something that, again, I think is something that would provide a huge benefit to local manufacturers, local producers, local businesses. The fiber optic thing, number one is let's make sure we don't lay it in the same damn trench. I think that would be bad. The rail line, I think that's a potential option. We could look at that. We need to look at the other areas that we're going to be doing this. We need to make sure that it's someplace that's easy to lay it, easy to maintain it, and make sure that it's not someplace that's more likely to be taken out again by either operator error or landsliding or whatever issue.
Okay, there's 3 questions there. First, how do I feel about subsidized rail? Subsidized rail on the from the public sector, there's a tremendous amount of options there. The federal government, state government, and private enterprise coming together. I think that the question is kind of misconstrued here. We need to have port development. Port development in turn coordinates with rail development. You can't have an empty ship come in here and expect to pick up goods that we're producing here. The goods that they bring in here, we have to be able to transport out of here. Okay? Local businesses would benefit tremendously from the rail. 90% of the goods and services that come into Humboldt County have to come in via the highways. When we go to the fiber optics, there are more options than just going down the rail. We need it, and we need it now. We have right-of-ways such as PG&E, gas, that we can utilize before we look at the rail.
And I think, one of the things that I am focused on are what are the building standards that we use. I think it's surprising that we don't have a green building program in Humboldt County. We don't have aggressive energy standards. We don't have those types of policies on the types of infrastructure that are light on the land. And that's really where my priorities when it comes to land use would be. And so, consistent with the development of those policies, it changes the way we look at the way we zone and plan for future development. When we have good policies that would allow us to mitigate for some of the negative impacts that we try to adjust for in the general plan update process, it really changes the equation. And I think we have to be very careful about the impacts to infrastructure, especially transportation and the sewage infrastructure. But I think we need to be thinking outside of the box and really looking at other infrastructure technologies that are more attached to land and less dependent on an industrial scale, urbanization types of strategies that we're basically reliant on. And that really all 3 of our alternatives that we're looking at are based on that industrial treatment of waste and provision of resources.
Everybody from Fish and Game to the Health Department to the environmental community agrees sketch plan A, it's the thing. And I look at it and I say the rate of growth for sketch plan A is the rate of growth or beyond the rate of growth that we have experienced in this county. And so there's plenty of room for houses. There's plenty of room for growth in sketch plan A. I do reserve the right, as a supervisor, I would look at some of the zoning around neighborhoods that sketch plan A calls out. In some cases, I think the zoning could be less dense and a little more appropriate right around the urban services boundaries. And I'd have to get a map out to show you exactly where I mean. But I looked at it and I found those and I thought, wow, B is actually better environmentally in some ways than A in certain pockets. As far as the plan, I just like to get it going and get it done with. We've got a general plan in Arcadia. As a council, we just are finishing review of the whole land use guide, which is bigger than our general plan, because we took lots of meetings to do it. And so I think that really what we need to do is get to work, get the meetings, study sessions, get through them, make a decision, and move on.
As we keep adding to these elements, we become more intrusive and more cumbersome. The people that I talk to, including myself, feel that the 7 elements in the last 20 years have served us well. We need to get back to the basics. We need communities that keep with the communities themselves.
One about, should we start over? Realistically, Humboldt County is just right on target with the way these things go across the state. When you're looking at land use for a big piece of land that Humboldt County is, yeah, there's a lot of game playing, there's a lot of different interests that come to bear, and this is the process. It's not pretty, but it's the way it goes. So we have to, keep persevering on this thing.
Yeah, I support living wage in any way you can get it. My oldest son, when he moved to San Francisco some years ago, in San Francisco, went to work for the Gap, and I assumed he'd be making some kind of decent money. When I got down there and see him and talk to him and try to help him get started in college, he was getting $6 an hour, just like he gets $6 an hour here, paying twice the rent. And so in San Francisco, when they applied that minimum wage, it really helped out people like him. It was a little too late, too little and too late, but it's there. And I think that it can help the County of Humboldt by raising up the bottom a little bit. I think that if you help the people on the bottom, you certainly help the people on the top by having better employees. People don't change jobs as often. They're more happy to be at work, and they don't have to suffer with the $4 a gallon gasoline quite as bad. So there's where I'm at.
Mark?
I also support a living wage and working to support living wage jobs here in Humboldt County. Actually, studies that have been done a couple of times over the years have shown that a true living wage in Humboldt County is something that allows someone to be able to afford a median price home here. And this is before our latest skyrocketing prices. Was more like $18 an hour. So, is everyone going to be able to do that? Probably not. But anything that helps people to be able to get closer to that is a good thing. We've got to keep in mind that ultimately we're paying for people that aren't able to afford all the services that they need for their life. We're picking up the tab one way or another. The public picks up all of those costs. So either they're getting paid for it, or we're paying for it in other means. So I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with the specifics of that ordinance, since that's the city of Eureka that's being circulated in. But the concept of making sure that people are paid enough so that they can afford to take care of themselves is a great thing. And as Paul pointed out, yeah, it helps to ensure longer-term employees, which is a great thing for those businesses too. Less attrition, less job training costs.
Super. Living wages are obviously something that's critical to the success of a community. I happen to believe that the best way to provide living wages is through investments that increase productivity and training, making sure you have a workforce that's more productive, higher skilled, that's going to be able to earn higher wages without just raising the cost of the goods. There's a relationship between the cost of labor and the cost of the finished product. And so if you're not careful, you can just end up chasing your tail with the cost of goods and the cost of wages. There's also a component in what we do with the cost and how we manage our housing supply to make sure that housing costs don't continue to spiral, to make sure that as wages increase, it just doesn't, they're not just chasing a stagnant housing supply and driving prices up further so they stay attainable. So anything we can do to encourage investment in technologies that make our workers more productive, anything we can do to encourage training and investment in training that makes our workers more productive, and growing our economy and making sure that the cost of goods stay low relative to the wages we earn are the policies that I would favor, that I think make the most sense. And I would work very hard as supervisor to accomplish those things.
Thank you. John?
Well, California is not a right-to-work state, so we have to abide by the minimum wage of the state, not the federal government. The feds are already lower than the state. To put more regulations on private business is very intrusive, and it's hard on private businesses. I know in my business, I pay a lot more than minimum wage so that I can keep employees, because it takes a long time to train them, and I don't want that turnover because it costs me money. So I think it's up to the businessman. I don't think it's up to the local government to say what wages we have to